Good afternoon. Welcome to the Arts Alive Visual Festival. The festival is going to take place from September until December 2020. And the aim for Arts Alive to host the program virtually was obviously through two obvious reasons, which was the pandemic itself, but it did not stop the programs from going. So this year, we're also including the film online masterclasses, which we would hope you'll enjoy with us. And thank you to all the partners that has made the session possible, to the Gauteng Film Commission, to Arts Alive, to the City of Johannesburg, to Ritual Stores. And today I am your host, Ntabeling Pora from the Gauteng Film Commission. With me, I have my panelists. So I will introduce Azania Mendani, Daniel Kapman, as well as Mposha Balala. But I will not do any justice without allowing them to fully introduce themselves so that I don't shortchange their great abilities. So I'll start with you, Azza. Azania?
Technology will show you flames. Hey, show you up, show your age. So anyway, I am Azania. I am from an organization called Locations Africa, but I also sit on the IBFC as a member, and I'm also now part of SASFED as well. Collectively kind of talk about film safety in terms of what's happened with COVID. But my background is that I have worked with the National Film and Video Foundation as a marketing executive, but I also have my own business. I since have left, and I have my own business, and I promote Africa as a filming destination of choice, travel throughout the continent, trying to understand, the special nuggets that we have. And on top of that, we, uplift and, kind of promote what Africa has to offer from a filming destination point of view.
Thank you. Mpo?
Hi, yeah, my name is Mpo, and pretty much work as a location scout, and I do unit as well. And yeah, I've started in the industry around the 90s till today. And yeah, location is what I'm passionate about, and it's something that promotes our destinations as a film destination where people can come and film and do what they love the best.
Okay, thank you. Daniel?
Okay.
Hi, I'm Daniel Kaplan. I'm the exec producer of Bioscope Films. I also sit on the EXCO of the Commercial Producers Association of South Africa. I've been doing this for about 26 years. I've worked in a couple of other countries doing this. And yeah, also super passionate about it, and interested to get into the discussion.
Whilst you're on that, David, we can't talk about location scouts and not talk about it as a career. And it's a career that's given attention to. There's a huge skills gap, and we don't have as much location scouts in the country. Like we count them from the tip of our hands. It's very, very few. Why do you think we don't have more location scouts? And also, why is that there's no female location scouts? I've been searching and searching and searching.
There are
few.
No, there are a few, mostly in Cape Town, fun enough. I think what happens with location scouts, and I actually started a long time ago as a location scout, about 20-something years ago. And for me personally, it's a very interesting thing. Paul touched on it. He's a location scout. He's also a unit manager. So it's almost like people have to have their feet in both camps to to make, etc. And that's the amount of work that there is. Whereas in countries, when I worked in the UK, for example, when I worked in Australia, the guys are often, they're a scout or they're a unit manager. They very rarely cross over. And there's crossover obviously, but here it's more common that obviously everyone does a bit of both. And I think for me, I've always wondered why kind of photographic trainees and people who've got an eye, who can take a great photograph, who are personable and who are kind of approachable and intelligent, because you've really got to ring a doorbell, or you've got to knock on a door, whatever it is, or you've got to get into places that aren't easy to get into, and unlike other countries, South Africa, we spend a lot of time trying to keep people out of our houses and out of our businesses and stuff. And a poor location scout's job is to literally get inside and take photos. So you've got to have a certain personality, and then you've also got to be able to take great photos. And I think there is a huge opportunity for good photographers and personable, friendly people to take it on as a career, because there are, there is a bit of a dearth, and definitely from a female point of view in Gauteng.
Mm-hmm. But would you like to take this one? What do people really need to study for one to be a location scout? Obviously, we can't assume everybody knows. And if somebody really wanted to pursue a career in location scouting, what do they need to study? What is important? How do they go about it?
To be quite honest with you, I think I know that everyone has a photographic mind, but I think for one, needs to be able to have a photographic mind. What I mean by that is a lot of times we're given a script or a description of, depending, like with a commercial, you're given a brief that, okay, this is what we're looking for. This is retro, or this is urban, or this is rural. This is what we want to do. You kind of need to draw a paint in your mind of what these guys are looking for. I mean, with things like films, television dramas, you're given a script and you need to go through that script. While you read, you are actually painting that picture in your mind that, oh, okay, this is how this is looking, it's going to be looking like, or this is what is wanted, you see. So studying, I mean, you can study film and television as a base, or in a broader way. But with these kind of departments, these are like specialty departments whereby you need to know exactly what you're doing. Like for example, I remember there was one director who said to me, the way you're looking for locations, you'd be good in the art department, you see. So it's like whatever that you do as a scout, you need to you think about your art department, you think about your sound department, because you don't want to look for a location where it's noisy, because obviously that location is useless for everyone, you know. You need to look for a location that is going to be easily accessible if you're not available, because at times it happens that you have to find other locations while we're shooting on this particular location. You need to be able to find the kind of places that are going to be easier and build relationships with these people, so that whenever you have a backlog, because sometimes weather decides to do its own things, and it happens that we are not able to finish what we're supposed to do for the particular day, and we need to do an extension. So with because you've built that relationship with a particular location, that's when you are able to go back. Otherwise, a lot of times, if you don't build those relationships, the minute you want to go back and finish off, it becomes a problem, because of you didn't establish that relationship beforehand and explain to people what it is that we are doing. Because a lot of people think that this industry is like your kind of a fancy industry, and things are done as they are seen on television, and which is not the case, you know.
True.
So it's very important as a scout to, as Daniel said, that you need to establish a good relationship with people. You go and knock on people's doors, especially now that the biggest problem that I had before was with theft. We had a lot of people that were impersonating us or other people as if they coming from the government, knock on people's doors. The next thing, a house is burgled or someone has been robbed out of their house because of they've let people in. And because of all of those things, now including COVID, it's not as easy as it was before. You kind of need to give those people assurances. Like there's a shoot that I did the other day on location. I had to let these guys know that we're not shooting in the house, but should that happen, we're going to fumigate the house before. And then when we finish, we need to fumigate it as well, so that for their safety as well, because
Of course.
I think at the moment, no one really knows how this disease is contracted. But for safety's sake as well, we need to make sure that these locations that we use are safe for us and are safe for their original occupants.
I think you've already begun to touch at exactly where we were going to go into, to say, now that we are during level 1 and we are still during the lockdown, how accessible is it for productions to access some of these locations, particularly the private ones where you really have to be putting all these safety measures? How accessible is that, Aza?
Depends, okay, from set to set. It really depends, as long as they're kind of working within the regulations that government and the Health and Safety Act puts out there. So each production now is seemingly creating their own kind of utopia within the COVID environment. There's been a number of papers written that have been submitted to government to assist them, because we're the technocrats, so we are the ones that are on the ground doing the work. So I mean, through SASFAIR, through the Events Council, through SAICA, there's a lot of papers that have been presented, such that there's an understanding as to what does it mean from an eventing point of view, for instance, where you can have 250 people inside, you can have 500 people outside, and taking those kind of restrictions and drawing them down to your set of maybe 17 people. Funerals now you can have 100 people. How do you take that and translate it to work within the film set environment? So sets they're all local in the main because of, international flights coming in, as much as they're open for business flights, there's also the quarantine period that has to be factored into for internationals. There's also some countries that are not allowed in, and those kind of challenges and difficulties. So from a local production point of view, each production team and line manager and producer and director, they're all taking on board what the Health and Safety Act has to offer and has to say, and also consulting with entities like Arts and Culture, with the Events Council, with the papers that SASFAIR has put out, and such kind of paperwork to navigate and work it out. Couple of things that need to happen. There has to be a medic on site. Every single person has to be checked for COVID. Some sets now are actually quarantining within a hotel environment, where they say, guys, leave, your family's not going to see you for 8 weeks. Take the job or not kind of situation, whereby they're able to then, lock people into that space. They can monitor what they're eating. They can monitor who comes in and out. So to those extremes, obviously budget dependent, is where the different production entities are taking their work. Cast, or they're all quarantined. Some, expect a test every week. You must go and retest yourself and bring the results through. Some, the medic must check every 2 hours, or, morning, noon, and night. Also, there must be sanitation booths, there must be sanitation areas in terms of lunch. Before we used to have the common kind of, buffet lunches and such, and you can take biscuits from that no longer happens. You have, everything is individually wrapped. The caterer has to come in. They come in sanitized. They're completely covered. It looks quite ghostly, but that's as far as we've had to go. The chairs are separated out. So there are precautions, and these precautions are taken from the different, like I said, journals, papers, acts that are out there. But the film industry does not have its own act. It doesn't have a locations act. It doesn't have a film production act or anything. It's just having to really, for your production and your team, translate what is out there to make it make sense for you. Take pictures on everything that you do, how your catering is set up, because somebody's going to come and ask a question. There will be maybe SAPS or the health department might just come and say, I want to see what you've done in terms of protecting your cast and crew. So we're having to also take pictures as proof of what we try to do. So there's a lot more that goes in. It does add to your budgets, but it'd rather pay extra and keep your team safe than not. And also it's about key crew, key cast, key crew. You don't need extras, no family members, it's all of those kind of things. And sometimes even the base camp is a bit bigger because now you need more parking for other cars. It's complex, but I mean, Dan and Paul will vouch that it's working, but very, very slowly and quite tiny, quite minutely.
So, so you want to jump in there, Dan?
Yeah, I just want to say we actually set, so the CPA worked fairly hard on protocols during level 5, and we got our protocols through to the government through the Department of Arts and Culture on level 4. So we were able to start shooting them, but our very, very rigid protocols. As Anya said, it's kind of like it's kind of common sense. It's space, sanitizing, checking temperature. I mean, we've got medics on every shoot. The medic walks around every 15, 20 minutes, re-sanitizing hands, be it people at the monitor, etc. Masks on at all times, over the nose and the mouth. The only people not wearing masks are obviously the actors in front of camera. Once they leave in front of camera, they put masks back on. So, it's kind of fairly obvious. I mean, the catering is the big thing. We're actually trying to see if there's a way of getting some form of a buffet back, but not where it is a buffet that everyone serves themselves from.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So how should we manage international shoots? Are they allowed? Who is allowed? Who is not allowed? And what is the best for us to manage these shoots? Because we really need this income coming back, and we need to start making ease of business for our international investors. What is necessary for the international shoots, and how can they be best managed for now?
Okay.
Do you want me to answer that?
No, you can start, because I mean, from the commercial side, slightly different, but you can go. Okay, so for international inbound, we are restricted by literally the flights that can come into our country. Literally, that's kind of where it is, unless it's Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho, Swaziland, those kind of where you can drive in and out. Even there, it's a lot of protocols that have to happen, but we don't have that many productions coming in from the neighboring states. So we are bound by that. And the second hurdle they have to jump is the quarantine period. Sometimes it's 7 days, sometimes it's 14 days, how many people. And depending on which countries are highlighted as danger zones, or those countries that have got high rates of COVID and second phase coming in, those countries, there's a lot of quarantine that goes on. So are they coming in? You probably find maybe a scout is coming in, but the entire production team, not to the extent as they were.
Whilst you're on that one, Azza, before you come in, Dan, at whose cost is the international quarantine period incurred by? Is it incurred by the hosting state, which will obviously be in this case South Africa, or the shoots itself must have the budget for their own quarantine because they have to incur those costs? Who's incurring these costs?
In some instances, it's shared. It really just depends on the number of people and why they're here. But remember, it is strictly business, and you have to prove that it's a business flight. It's not a family flight or a friend flight. But what also happens is some production teams might just want to manage the protocols and the quarantine themselves. So in that instance, then they have to really take that on board, because internationals, even on a normal day, no COVID, you find that they have always really had their own protocols around their teams. Things like water, they don't know that we're a blue drop country kind of situation where they would want to, plastic bottles everywhere because it must be, our clean water and things like that. So they've always kind of had their own protocols, but within COVID, depending on the application that goes through and how finicky the inbounds are, it can be shared, it can be solely production, and can be state.
Okay.
I was just going to say, what we've actually managed to do, and we did a big 8-day commercial shoot during level 4, and which is quite an undertaking. And our agency was Cape Town based, and we've done it with overseas guys as well as an industry. And basically, what we're finding is we're pretty much live streaming our VT. So we're managing to get the guys to. I mean, it's an absolute pain, but we're getting the guys to dial in and to communicate with us. So a lot of the VT and DIT guys have set up streaming solutions so that the guys can literally look on their screens in whatever country they're in and kind of communicate with us as if they were sitting at a VT, and direct from there. We've pulled in directors who are kind of being surrogate directors, if you will, or ADs who are obviously taking the communication from the internet. And there's obviously there's a cost for it, but there's the VT setup which we used very effectively, and there was only a 4-second delay. But I mean, it's literally like it's finding different SIM networks depending on which is the strongest, and it jumps onto those. So you very rarely lose it. And there's another one, you're shooting in the middle of nowhere. I think there's even a satellite option. So I mean, we really can embrace the technology, and kind of there's no reason for them not to come. And I suppose that one of the huge advantages is our currency is still under enormous threat. So we are still a very attractive proposition for certainly for Europeans, Americans, to come through.
So, Mpho, would you say the stakeholders, which are obviously of critical importance, particularly for international shoots, like your Home Affairs, are they playing ball, and are they helping us to make sure that we are putting all these productions into the country as efficient as we wish? Are they playing ball?
I think this is one of the biggest problems that I've experienced as a scout, that I still wish that one day we can have all the stakeholders meetings where we can discuss such issues, because for example, we've got the turnaround time that our JMPD gives us, and they don't understand how production works, because a client can decide that, okay, let's do this in 2 days time, and not understanding, depending on where we're doing it. For example, let's say a typical shoot that needs to happen on the street. We need to lock off that road. JMPD requires us to give them 7 days prior before they can give us a permit to lock off or shoot on that particular road. So these are the things that we need to kind of get all the stakeholders to come and sit down and talk about these things, so that they understand where we're coming from. You find things like if you have to do permits for using the kids, you find that a lot of these guys, they knock off early. At 3 o'clock, they've knocked off. And after 3, you can't find anyone else. You have to wait for the following day. And the following day, they start at 7:30 till maybe 10 or 12. It's their lunchtime. So it's like we're really, really frustrated as an industry when it comes to our government stakeholders, because we feel like they're not giving us that support that we need to be able to make things happen.
So at the moment, we are not, government support is not effective to assist you to do your work as you should, because of all these conditions and constraints and different departments seeking different things, and different departments are creating their own rules that they will adhere to for COVID, and all of us are not speaking in one voice. As a result, we are equally frustrating
Exactly.
the scouts, in actual fact.
Exactly, because this is the problem. I think the last meeting that we had with not everyone, but it was the JMPD, the JRA, and the SAPS. It was, I'm sure, about 10 years ago, where we all sat on one table and tried to speak about trying to help each other, so that we all work like a hand in a glove. And then after that, because the other thing that I've noticed as well is that you'd find that on the certain departments, certain people don't work for a longer period. You find that every now and again, there's new people that come in, and when they come in, they don't understand how the system works. And you find yourself having to start over again, trying to explain how things are done, why this late, why like that, you know? So I just wish they can make a unit that would deal with these kind of things that are focused on dealing with the film and television industry as a whole.
So with you saying that, and anybody could take on this one. So how much money is lost in terms of revenue and the GDP? How much is that affected since COVID? Because it must be a lot of money. That I know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from a commercials point of view, I would say about 250 million rand. And I would say if you take the multiplier of 2.7, which is basically for every rand spent, another about 2.7 gets generated into the economy, then I'd say, yeah, it's an extra, 2.7, 2 rand 70 probably on top of all of that per 250 mil. So yeah, it's significant. I mean, just coming back to Mpho's point, I mean, we actually, as a CPA, we met with the JMPD a while ago to try and talk through some stuff, and they were fairly helpful, but you very much have to give them as much notice as possible. So it's very much about getting your application in, and then possibly being able to adapt your application later, rather than last minute applications are a nightmare for them, and they really do struggle, and which is difficult in our industry because we really don't know. And obviously, we'd all love to have directors employed, for weeks and weeks before, but sometimes, we're only having a recce or a gathering of all the key people a day or two before, and that's when things sometimes change.
Okay, so coming back to South Africa, what is currently existing? What are the current new locations that we could look into using? What is currently available, and what is overdone? And what's new? What's fresh? How can we freshen this thing up? Because we need to vibe this thing eventually. So we need to attract more people, but we can't attract people if we don't have that selling point. And I think this is the time where we either have to resell the country and re-advertising who we are as what we call ourselves as a preferred destination, in Africa. What is new? What is fresh? What should people look forward to? Even local productions. What is it that they need to start exploring outside of what they're already used to? Anybody can take this one.
I think from a side point of view, I'd say it's a difficult one because it all goes back to the writing team. Remember, everything that we look for is per what's written. And up until maybe we decide to say we're changing our writing styles in terms of locations to more juicier and fresh looking locations, that's when things would start to change. I know with commercials, I mean, every now and again you see something new, and you find that with a lot of other genres like your films, your television dramas, we kind of visit and revisit each locations like a couple of times because it works for us. The other thing as well is the friendlier they are to film groups, the better or the more they're going to be used. So it's not a thing that we can say, no, we're dropping that location, we're not going to use it anymore, we found something fresh. It's all about the juices that each location can give to us as to trying to produce whatever that we're trying to produce to make it look good in the eye.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in Ntabeleng, I would say there's, as Paul says, there's go-to locations. I mean, I don't like the idea of go-to locations. I like finding new stuff. And I mean, it actually goes back to when we were talking about what makes, great location scouts. I think, what you need to study. I think you need to study your city. I think you need to be, going to an art gallery opening, like when I was a scout, I used to go to residential house, sales and stuff, because I knew I could get in. So I'd look around and I'd be like, okay, cool. So it's got a nice kitchen. Great, cool. I'll remember it. And then I knew. So it's in my mind. I'm remembering those places. When I'm looking around, I'm always seeing, is there an interesting architectural thing over there? Whatever. I'm going to still do that. So I think it's always keeping your eyes open and always thinking what could be different. If you're talking about what could help us open new locations, I think unfortunately a lot of the sort of, I suppose, government-owned locations, which we don't always have access to, or there's a lot of red tape to cut through to get into them. Often there can be brilliant tunnels or big open plan spaces and things like that we almost can't get into because they're not utilized, but there's lots of red tape to get through to see it.
To see it.
Yeah, and often those places aren't sort of maintained particularly well. So I think we're losing actually a few of those type of locations, which we could obviously utilize. I think it's really about communication. I think from a governmental point of view, they could just help by, as Paul says, like having some sort of a facilitation arm. But I do find that the GFC is pretty useful from that point of view, and that sort of gets us into places possibly that maybe take too long to get into otherwise.
And what can we do to maintain or promote South African heritage, in the sense where, we've always been making this argument to say, for us to have our heritage, we need to create our own identity, whether it's through locations, whether it's through the stories that we tell, but we need to create an identity that when you see our films, you are clear that they're from South Africa. Case in point, simple example, every Hollywood film, they will have their Hollywood opening sequence, which that's Hollywood. Every Hollywood and American film, there'll always be an American flag in it. It doesn't matter what locations they use. Somebody in South Africa know exactly how the American president's office looks like, because they've got 20,000 president films, and all of them, they will have their Oval Office. You know it. You don't have to think twice. How can we start creating and preserving what we may deem to be a South African content and South African locations? How can we promote that?
So I'm gonna jump in on this one, right?
Sure.
There's many different vehicles, but I think the one that would one of the ones that would work really well is, for instance, funding, state funding. There can be almost non-negotiables, right, within that space, whereby, in Gauteng there are 100 really great sites, okay, but in your film you have to show 5% or 2% of those sites, or 10% of those sites. With like the United States and the UK, you will always see their flag. And I think it's just one of those things that's been, inherent within their minds as in terms of patriotism, right? So there are those kind of vehicles which we can enforce if, from a government point of view, for funders who are saying this is state money, just like the DTI at the end of all of the incentivized films globally, the DTI logo at the bottom of the credits. So it's those kind of mechanisms that starts to make sure that our key sites, like a Nelson Mandela Bridge, must be established and shot. The flag must appear at least 3 or 4 times. You know, when we are talking and promoting South Africa, when we're promoting South Africa as a filming destination or any country on a continent, is to then have a conversation with the scriptwriter to say, okay, instead of saying Florida 0800 hours, can't you actually say Durban 0800 hours? Can it not be a script item, you know? And that helps brand South Africa, for instance, to be able to promote South Africa. It starts to talk to those things, in my view. And again, it comes down to what Mpho said earlier. It starts at the script phase. And as a you know, location scout, sometimes you do actually have influence as to that particular location. So you can choose a backdrop and you can kind of manipulate a situation for people to start seeing something like Cape Town had that massive flag. I don't know what street it was, but you knew that was a South African flag. And now the South African flag is the third most known flag in the world. So everyone already identifies with that flag. So it's having to find a way in convincing the producer, the writer, to say, you know, this is a great location. You already know that in the background, the legislature is somewhere there, and it says legislature of, you know, wherever it is. But it's small little toys that can be available. I mean, Dan, I know you probably have some views here as well. But if we can start from a funding point of view, we can start talking about marketing funding for films, for instance. We can then, I mean, you can say this definitely from state that, okay, no problem, but in your script, especially local films, you have to mention heritage sites. Then you start speaking to the museums. You start speaking to the Tsong Museum, for instance, and say, or whichever museum, and say, guys, you have an amazing array of, you know, artifacts. Can we come and shoot within your space? You speak to the Heritage Council. Okay, this is what it means to shoot films. As long as we don't break things, we don't, you know, disrespect the space, how can we work with you to work within your heritage site? And again, like Dan said, it comes down to communication. It comes down to what it is we're trying to do, specifically with local films. What is it we're actually trying to do? Because again, it's not necessarily changing the film to sort of specific narrative. It's what you do with the silent character, which is called the location, to be able to speak about that particular heritage narrative, that particular South African narrative, that particular Port Elizabeth narrative, that particular, you know, Long Street narrative. How do we start doing those things?
Yeah, it's actually true, because I remember I shot something in East London, and I know East London right now is running a campaign whereby they want to promote the Eastern Cape as your film-friendly city. And you're finding a lot of companies shooting. I think there's about 7 or 8 now that I know of that have actually shot in the Eastern Cape. The city's film-friendly, except for the weather, because the weather, you know, where there's an ocean, the weather changes all the time. It's not as stable. But you find that there's great locations. People are accommodating, even though they don't understand the film, but they're willing to help, because this is something new that they've never experienced. And the fact that we as a film company, we coming into the house, we're using their space, and we're compensating them for it. I mean, it's another way of them generating an income sideways, except for the income that they have. So these are the things that they're kind of open to when it comes to the film industry.
Okay. So would you want to throw in some few pointers there, Dan?
I think, I think the simplest thing for me is just to say, we always forget that, locations also, I mean, obviously you've got landmarks, but you've also got things like, fauna and flora and rivers and things that are very, beautiful, obviously mountains, like whatever it may be, things that look very South African. And they will also, we've had a lot of travelers in our country. So like when you show them something, it reminds them of when they were here, etc. So I think that's all positive. But coming back to Mpho's point, I think the most important thing is that we always, actually, Zanya's point, like we always respect the location. for me, there's nothing worse than coming into a location and trying to get into a location when someone who's unprofessional and isn't shouldn't actually be in our industry has been in there before us, and they've ruined the location. The location doesn't want to have anything to do with anyone with a camera or have anyone step in there. And I think one of the things we need to keep an eye on is, I think when we find people who are consistently damaging locations or ruining locations for the rest of us, we need to find a way of holding them, accountable. So I do think locations is a very important.
Is key. So in the 9 provinces that we have, which of the provinces is seeing a rise in more locations?
Gauteng and the Western Cape.
Thank you. I must tell that to Priscilla at the office so that she can see that she's doing a great work.
Yeah, but the other thing, you've got your KZN as well. That's growing substantially. It's not as big, but it's growing because of, I think, again, the reason why these other provinces are growing slowly, it's because of what's written for in the script. Because remember, whatever that's written in the script, we'll always try and look for something that can match that. And I'd say that South Africa is a blessed country because we can do Nigeria, we can do Namibia, we can do all these African states within this country, because we've got each and every province can accommodate a certain city. Why I'm saying this, there's a Sean Penn movie that we did that was called The Last Face. Now that I'm promoting the film, I remember we shot in the Eastern Cape, we shot in KwaZulu Natal, we shot in Gauteng, we shot in Uppington, trying to replicate that as Namibia. And you find that all these spaces have a certain dynamic of how the locations are looking alike to actually accommodate us. I mean, in Uppington as well, we've got things. We shot in a place that looked like it was the salt pans, which is something that we never thought that we have in this country. But I must say that we are very blessed as South Africa as a country, because we can accommodate all these other countries and make it's a different country, else we know that we're in South Africa.
But within the 9 provinces themselves, which one are we seeing the least of shoots?
Limpopo.
Yes.
Oh, disappointing. Because you think that people will take advantage of the weather and the warmth and all of that. Limpopo.
I'd also say Northern Cape, like, maybe now and then when you need a desert environment, now and then we need a specific period, it's there. But what the other influence also is on the ground. What is there that assists filmmakers, location scouts on the ground? Why we say, Gauteng, KZN, Western Cape is because those are the nodes where you will find a film office, you'll find a commission, you will find somebody, you will find a Dan, you'll find a Mpo, you find a lot of the facilities, the environment enabling, and it's not to say that the other provinces are not trying. I mean, Bloemfontein have, they've got a Department of Arts and Culture who have been trying to get a film commission up and running. They've at least got a film desk. You have Limpopo, who's also, in the phase of building a film commission. You've got Northwest, again, who are also through tourism are trying to get, build a film office at the very, very least. So on the ground, what is there? Is there an understanding from, the Limpopo, police department, the health departments of what film is about, how to block off roads, because as much as we use a small little set for a particular scene, my word, you're taking up at least 1 or 2 kilometer radius with everything else, base camp included. There's so many other things that are involved that, are the other provinces geared up? Eastern Cape, we know that there is a Eastern Cape Development organization there as well, and they have, but again, other resources, equipment? Do you have crew on the ground? Are we always importing our crew from Johannesburg to go to Port Elizabeth, East London? Are we, what skills are available? Not to say there's none, but it's that thing of we consistently choose to import skills, and those kind of challenges. I mean, Mpho, you're rightly so. KZN is growing now because their skills base is growing, the equipment base is growing. The KZN Film Commission is, as well as the DFO, are also very committed. The Zulu Film Office, they're also very committed to making sure that it works on the ground. So I guess these other Northern Cape, I don't know if at all there is anything, but it is about exploring. Like Dan says, if you're going to be a location scout, you have to get into the mode of traveling and exploring and asking questions and seeing what's possible. If you want to shoot in a mountainous range, is there a flat plain where you can build a base camp nearby within 2 kilometers? That's not too far. And those kind of things to be able to present them to someone, because somebody's willing to pay if you put a strong enough motivation from budgeting as a location scout, location film for location fixer, and all of those elements.
And I suppose you're correct when you're saying then the lack of skills that are around, then it becomes more costly, because then it means you need to bring the entire skills base from one place and take it to another. When if you've got a Western Cape, for example, the skills base is already on the ground. So as and when you arrive there, there's always someone that is willing to help and willing to tell you what is around and what is available. And versus when you don't have a support base, whether it being a film office, whether it's skills on the ground, then it makes it difficult, because of then now it means you're beginning more on a research instead of just identifying what you may need and making decisions. And I suppose that because of then we are also working on these tight budgets, there's no time to explore. There's just no time to be exploring around. You get into a province, you pick what you need, you get all necessary approvals, you get the work done, you come in and you go out. And I think maybe those are the other things that prohibit some places not to be fully utilized, as beautiful as they may be, primarily and purely because of the skill space and accessibility to any form of support.
Well, yeah, and it's equipment. From a commercials point of view, we'll generally shoot, let's say, 2 days. Or let's say we've got a 2-day budget. I mean, if I'm in Cape Town or Johannesburg, I can shoot for 2 days. If I've got a 2-day budget and I want to shoot in Durban, I've got to travel for half my day with my equipment because there's not enough equipment down there possibly, and I've got to travel back half a day. So essentially, I can only shoot for 1 day. So in other words, that it's that kind of stuff. But if there were more crew down there and equipment down there, I could shoot down there more often. So it's that balance. It does come down to film infrastructure, which is not necessarily just the commissions and those kind of things. It's the actual crew and equipment and vehicles, etc.
With accessibility to locations, how are we looking in the rest of Africa?
Wow, it's I think it's a macro challenge of what we face in South Africa. Okay, and whether we like it or not, South Africa is kind of leading the charge when it comes to shooting films, stills, commercials for the continent. And there are other growing nodes. You've got Kenya, which is gaining stability, and they're also quite strong. You've got Namibia. Now and then a film comes in, maybe it's about 5 a year or some stat like that. You used to kind of have the Morocco environment, but then you also have, versus that, there's a lot of local films that are taking place. So I can't really talk about the local films. I mean, those are hundreds of thousands of films that are made, but they're made very, very differently from what we're kind of discussing here. So the challenge is there is information and is access. And also you go into states, for instance, some of them, they're very aware, but then you find others, you can't go in with your own drone. There's a lot of restrictions, maybe because some countries have the drone blockers, which are, satellite, and it blocks your drone, and your drone is kind of, disintegrates into an oblivion. But some countries won't allow you to come in with your equipment, but that they don't have the equipment you need. So Yeah, and so the country might lose out in a particular shot because of that, or they might gain because they can then prove they have the same equipment and crew that can operate that kind of the equipment that's needed. Only about 5 or 7 countries really have a formalized film authority network. Others are growing, like Ethiopia doesn't necessarily have a film commission, but they do have a Ministry of Arts, and they are trying their best to, equip and equip their teams, equip other film producers to come on board and to kind of show themselves, such that when South Africa as an international, okay, must remember we are also international in that conversation, comes in, they can then, and they have started proving as well, that they actually do have the skill set. So it's again, Dan, you said research is about understanding the territory you go into, and also trying to find the fixes. And the other things as well, going into culture, is to understand the land that you're playing with. The heritage imperatives. Are you kind of allowed to walk in there? Is there a war zone? Is there a cultural reference within that space? But I think on the continent, there's still a lot of challenges. It's just, but there is willingness. There is a lot of willingness to make it make sense and make it happen and make it work, such that maybe if you know somebody within the authorities as a location scout, you've already gone to the country, you've explored, you've asked questions, and then when you get to the airport with your team, they have to meet you at the airport to say, I know these people, they will sign off, and then maybe your equipment can go in. So it's a different kind of relationship set up. But again, it's about what Mpho said earlier on, going there, establishing relationships, not making a South African assumption that you are, you can just do whatever you can, because you probably can't. You just need to be able to understand the dynamics in that country. Is it opening up? Yes, it is. And the reason why it's opening up is because these 7 countries I'm talking about go out. They go outbound and they talk about their country. They promote their country, and in ways that make sure that there's revenue coming in. So they really do spend a lot of time doing outbound activations in different parts of the world, speaking to different people, and they know who their market is as well. Like the East, they know their market is China, India, the Eastern Bloc, whereas, the West know who their kind of relationships are, which is Europe and the US. They know that that's kind of, their audience.
Is there I don't want to say a guild that covers locations in Africa, like your typical AFCI type vibe, that governs the continent's location, so that if you're at least a member of that particular guild of locations, then it's easy for us, and then to also ensure that there's more co-productions, but also the synergies within African countries to start working more together, because there isn't much collaborations in Africa as we should have, more than even the influx that we have with Canada, with the UK. There's more co-treaties there and co-productions. Is there locations guilds that would guide the continent on how to assist each other on synergies and particularly purely co-productions, just to improve the African locations?
You know what, they are, let me take it back a bit. So South Africa has about 9 treaties globally, and none of those are on the continent, first of all, right? So we don't have a treaty. So we can't even, as location scouts or location managers or people in the environment or filmmakers, kind of, leverage off of that. So you have the International Locations Guild, and you have membership there. But what is starting to happen is, there's projects like the African Film Commissions Network, which is trying to kind of bring the commissions together as one. The AU have started about 4 years back. They have a program, an audiovisual. The ministers discuss issues of how that helps. But from a locations fixer point of view, there's no real organization other than international ones. But what does seem to happen, and I'm sure Mpho and Dan, you can vouch on the continents, right? Those who are information and such. But things are developing very slowly, and to be able to represent. And the reason why things like African Film Commissions Network is trying to set up is because, the Association of Film Commissions International have said, Africa, can you group up so you have a seat on the international conversation? Whereas we don't have a seat at the moment. We cannot talk about or promote or protect, that which is ours. We're kind of, on the back burner on those, but there are small government, state initiatives that are happening, and such things. So it's a bit of a few things happening, but there's no guild of location managers on the ground at the moment, which is a shame.
Good.
Sorry about that. And I was asking this question deliberately because as Locations Africa, I suppose one of the key things that you are looking forward to in your mandate and your strategy is obviously improving and promoting more African locations to really attract those co-treaties which we currently have that exist. But also in the meantime, we don't have an African co-treaty. What do we do in the main to continue working? Because, in all these sessions, all the film festivals, all the seminars, we are always saying we need to collaborate more, but we are only talking about it only at industry level. But I suppose maybe at legislation level, that conversation is not there. And it defeats the purpose to say, let's work together. When you know that even the absence of having the co-treaty will make it impossible for the two countries to come and work together. And I think that's really where the challenge is, because somebody would really say it would only make sense to have a co-treaty firstly in Africa before you go abroad, because of really this is where home is, and then you go on. But unfortunately, it's the other way around. And I think, as government, it's something that we need to talk about, because we are always talking about Pan-Africanism. We're always talking about African collaborations, but what forms the basis of the collaborations is not there, which then is another catch-22 to say, okay, we're saying we want to have intercultural and intercontinental programs, yet the basis, which is those same treaties, are not existing.
Yeah, they don't. Again, it does come down to that. I mean, I know there's an MOU with Kenya and and the KZN Film Commission, for instance. I know there's an MOU that's coming through the NF, and these are things I know because of the research I've done as Location Africa to try and understand what's going on. I know that there was a treaty that was started with Tunisia. It didn't really go as far as it should. There's an MOUs that exist mainly between state and authorities within film. Like the Nigeria, there's some form of MOUs existing there, but and I think this is really a plea to through GFC to state to say, can we just really just finish what we started with the treaties that are kind of lagging in on the desk, to say, where are we with these? Have the film industry, I mean, CPA, SASFED, IBFC, all of us are saying we want to continue working. We want to benefit from incentives that are cut across our own continent. We don't always want to have incentives that work for inbound, which is outside of the continent. We don't always want that. We want to be able to access incentives and funding and be able to claim both countries their national film. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. There's a lot of people will say and shout at me and say there's a lot of processes and red tape. It was very easy to do Canada, Ireland, UK, Germany, Australia. Do I have to go through all of those? We did those for us when we have stability in some countries on the continent to be able to achieve that. Someone to say that, no, people have moved and think that's not the reason. It is the principle that needs to happen. If the others were able to move forward, I'm not saying it hasn't started. I'm saying to move forward, what's holding us back? And I think that us as an industry have to help. Are there to help you, and they're there to push you as state to make sure that these treaties happen, because the treaties help us to be able to enable and access funding both sides, give funding both sides, and alleviate budget stresses on the projects themselves.
Point, Daniel, do you have challenges when you have to go to Africa and shoot in any locations, or you're good to go? You are those guys. You've got this.
Look, we'll fly in with almost all of our equipment. I mean, it depends where we're talking. I mean, let's say I've shot in Malawi, for example. We'll fly in with everything. I'll fly in with backup stuff. I'll expect, unfortunately, I'll expect very little. And then we'll kind of roll with it. Places like Nigeria have improved. I mean, in the old days, you'd go there, you'd sort of negotiate a rate, and the next, with the person, you'd have the meeting, and the next day when you arrive with all the crew, the person you negotiated with wasn't there, and then you had to renegotiate, even though he probably was there, but behind a door or something. So it was quite frustrating. In the old, well, not in the old days, but I mean, like, I think another thing that's actually helped us a lot by taking stuff through is actually as much as I miss it, the fact we don't shoot on film anymore, it has taken a lot of pressure off us, because we can see what we're capturing. We can see that it's working. We don't have to worry about, someone mis-setting an X-ray machine on the way out and taking out our entire kind of, rolls and rolls of film. So we can kind of protect that stuff, which did happen in the past. So there are, in a way, there's a lot less risk when you go up into Africa from a commercial filmmaking point of view. But I agree with Azania. She's totally right. It can be a lot simpler. Like, I mean, if there was a GFC equivalent in those countries that you contact and help them, and they were almost, because often it's a fixer that you speak to, but the fixer is actually official. It's kind of a person who's sort of connected, it'd be great if it was someone more official, and then that person would, clear through the red tape, speed things up, and make the place more accessible. And then if you knew that was the case, you'd either want to return. The more pleasant the experience, the more likely you are to return and want to have it again, as opposed to an unpleasant experience, in which case most people don't want that again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Poza?
Yeah, I think taking from what Dennis said, the fixer's point of view is quite important, because without that body available, that's where the bigger problems are, because they're able to guide us as to this is the direction that you need to take. Don't even bother yourself going that route. But if we do this, this is how things are going to happen, and things are going to be easier for us. So I think the biggest thing right now is to try and make sure that we get people that understand how this industry works, because I think the biggest challenge is having to find people that think that they can do it, and only to find out during the process of trying to finish it off, they're cracking down, they can't do it, they've got this, they've got that, and they don't understand that this is a business. They think that because this is called an entertainment business, it's all about entertainment, and forgetting that this is like a business like any other business. And with us, we are actually controlled by time, we are controlled by the sun. These are the two things that we need to make sure that whenever we've scheduled things by the end of the day are done, because once we lose it's a cost to us that we don't have. So I think the more we find people that are willing and are about going to take an extra mile to make things happen, the better it's going to be for us.
Okay, so coming back home, leading to our closing this session, because we are chasing our time now. What is it that we need to do to boost the energies of getting back productions, coming back into the country and reshooting again? Because we were at a peak and it was great, and everything has messed us up. What is it that we need to do? Obviously, there must be more location indabas, the tourism indaba, to then start doing the work, because I think every other country is starting afresh to redo the work, to reassure people about safety, to reassure people about skills, to reassure people about all these facilities, skills, talent, equipment that we have, to say, we've got this, we are your guys, you need to come to South Africa, we are your preferred destination. Where do we start? Because the film commissions can't do it themselves. We also need your support. And, all these recommendations, we really are taking them to heart. And we'll obviously start implementing bit by bit, and to bring back to the stage where there are enough production shoots, both locally and internationally, because everybody has now flocked to studios. And because now it's studio shoots, obviously something has got to give. So some others are increasing, which is obviously studio shoots. Location shoots are now not a big thing because of all the restrictions. What do we do next? Or are we happy with the situation and the status quo, which I doubt not?
I think from my side, I'd say that a lot of companies are standing by. It's just that because of the level of restrictions of the countries that are considered to be risky countries to come into the country, that's what's actually binding us. Because if you can look at that list, a larger number of companies that usually come and shoot, and the ones that are looking to shoot into the country are the ones that are barred from coming to the country. But I know that they're actually standing by to make sure that we take off from where we left off, or we start from moving on.
Okay, then.
Yeah, I suppose, twofold. It's kind of it'll sound like I'm kind of going against what I'm about to say, but I think almost more regulation, so like clarity on the regulation, to say, like, we've got these protocols, this is the way we're operating, it's a safe environment, so therefore locations are safe. As Mpho said, we're pre-fogging locations, we're post-fogging locations, there's medics, there's temperatures, there's documentation. So we're running a tight ship from a control point of view. And again, let people in, but letting them in from certain countries that possibly bring in larger amounts of production, and then monitoring them. So I suppose, as much, it's a very difficult question, because you don't want to let people in who are possibly going to up infection rates. But it's a balance between infection rates and obviously GDP and turnover, etc. So I think you need to sort of make sure that everyone's following the protocols, that there's a little bit of regulation on them. I think when people don't follow them, and when people aren't interested in them and don't take them serious, I think they should be taken to task, and and there should be some sort of a I won't say punishment, but there should be some sort of a results that, because they're basically putting us all at risk. I mean, the location shoots on one day who's not following the rules, I have those people on my set the next day. So that's an important thing, that we all stay consistent with the regulations and consistent with the protocols. And then, like I said, everyone's going to go to be happy to go to a place where there's, safety and still we are very competitive internationally. From my current view, we offer a very good, as Mpho said, very good locations. Like our crews and our equipment is world class. So we just need to make it a comfortable enough place. And yes, if the government do let us, you're blocked, Ntaboleng, you're blocked again. So I think that's the main thing. Make it easy for them to come in. And well, not easy for them, but I mean, if it's specific business people are going to bring definitive business, then let one or two of them in. Maybe it's not letting 15 of them in, But like if it's a few clients, like maybe it's limiting the amount of clients in, but still bringing the production in would help a lot.
Okay.
I know for a fact our service guys in Cape Town are suffering. I mean, there's a lot of jobs that want to come in and can't come in. So you know that would be huge. I mean, they're an enormous money generator for the Western Cape.
Azza?
Yeah, I think definitely promoting our successes first as a country in terms of how we've managed COVID as a thing for all citizens. Also, individual shoots, maybe through the commission, maybe report to the commission that we've had 0 infections, or this is kind of how we're managing it, and being able to promote those successes, because those help alongside the fact that South Africa is the best places to shoot any of your films. Those kind of successes from digital media, that this is what's happening. Also, just making sure that we empower information. There's conversations now. It shouldn't be the number of people, but to be able to prove that the management is more important. But I mean, the entire world is suffering. I don't think we're definitely not in the only ones. But how do we then also promote what Dan, what you did with the commercial in level 4, whereby we have the equipment to do digital engagement? Maybe that's the thing to start promoting. And so then it maybe it does reduce the number of people in the future from coming, but what it does, it increases and empowers the fact that we are a technologically driven and technologically ahead country, just like with our banking system, which is it's one of the best in the world because of our securities around that. But there's for me, as Locations Africa, we just want to promote. We want to promote the good things, the positive messages out there. We want to promote the truth as to, okay, we may have this infection rate, but actually we're managing it in this way, and we are managing it in that way in order for people to feel safe. Because they know this thing is not going away anytime soon. But if they feel like they will be taken care of, they feel as if the medics are empowered, they feel as if there's enough promotion around, there's enough protection around. Then even the local teams will come. If we promote that we have our technology is world class, our LED screens are world class, we can do green screen technology, we can build, smart boxes, those kind of things, I think we would be able to remain competitive, definitely within the continent, but also maybe even sub-Saharan sector as well, to say that we can, lower hemisphere, not sub-Saharan only, but the lower hemisphere of the world, to remain competitive. That's kind of where I would definitely say we need to add on and complement the actual teams on the ground to move forward.
Thank you so much. I think from where we sit, from particularly the Film Commission side and maybe all the other government departments, I think all of us want to see, to be honest, the rate of applicants have not really decreased, because people applied, others way before the lockdown. So it did not change anything. But now that things are picking up, there's actually even more, because I suppose people had all the time to create their juices and write all their scripts. So in actual fact, we're receiving more applications right now. So we are hoping, obviously, that will result to more productions being effective and working, and also more productions not closing down. Because I think one of the key things that we were really, really worried about is the impact that it might have, which may then result to production houses closing down. And I think for now, maybe it's still premature, or maybe rather it's still early. We have not heard any productions that have closing down as yet, which I think we are very, very, very happy about. We don't know if maybe the COVID impact will even hit us much later, where we'll see some production houses close down. For now, we are very, very happy with that. But I think more than anything, with all the influx of applications that we are receiving, we are hoping that the industry will improve. There'll be more job creation. There'll be more accessibility to locations. There'll be more working together, because everybody's trying to pick up and everybody's trying to ensure that they are also being as helpful as they can, so that nobody really loses their job. And I think that's really what is of key importance to us in the commission. But I think we still want to continue marketing Gauteng as the preferred destination of choice. But when we are speaking as the country, we want South Africa to be the best preferred country, obviously, in the continent. And I think we'll also still like to raise that, even on behalf of all our sister agencies. And from the Gauteng Film Commission, we would like to thank you so much for your participation. The conversation was really needed. Locations conversations are never there. It's always all the other things. Locations, people, it's really, this conversation is not there. And I think we should not only do it because of it was COVID. I think let's start something that will touch base again and just also provide and promote what we have and what we have to offer as the country, as Azania alluded to, say, let's start celebrating the South African successes and start talking about South Africa's capabilities. Because so when people understand that we are capable of the skills and the services that they require, I would not see why not would people want to come, particularly now that we also have our own incentives. So at least we can also use that to our advantage. And thank you so much for making the time to be in this session, and thank you for honoring this invite. Thank you to the City of Johannesburg for allowing us the space through Arts Alive. Thank you to Arts Alive. Thank you to Ritual Stores. Thank you to the Gauteng Film Commission. Thank you to myself. And thank you to you. Nobody thanks the host. So, because today is the last one, and I've been doing this for the whole week, I think it's only safe to say that thanks to myself for pushing these conversations. Thank you so much, and have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.